Hi everyone. So the topic that I chose for my presentation was immigration in the 1950s, and I am Faith Minnick, so enjoy. So to start off, the first article that I read was a little bit of background information. So the McCarran-Walker Immigration Act, it was used to limit the immigration of colored races into America. The act became law in 1952, and most considered the law to be bad because it prohibited Negro, Chinese, and other darker-skinned people from entering the country in large numbers. So this did not really promote what America and our Constitution is all about, which is what led to people really disapproving of this act to begin with. So it was really designed to limit not only the number of immigrants, but also the potential citizens of color in our country. So President Truman really tried to combat this biased immigration. He was very against it, and he believed that all ethnicities should be counted in our annual immigration quota. He said that the failure to include Negroes and other non-whites is a discriminatory and unwarranted provision which should be eliminated from the law. He also went on to say that the quota system should be replaced by a method of selecting immigrants that is not based on race, color, creed, or national origin. So really, he just wanted to find a unbiased way of letting people into our country and becoming citizens and essentially just becoming an American. He even went as far as vetoing the McCarran-Walker Immigration Act, but he was unfortunately overruled by Congress at the time. So after that, there wasn't a whole lot he could do but show his disapproval to the people. Moving on, the next newspaper article that I read really just focused on people wanting change. So this was an article from a Methodist church that was against this McCarran-Walker Immigration Act and really wanted it revised or completely gotten rid of. So many people really didn't believe in limiting immigration. People wanted to see a change and unbiased immigration tactics put into place. They wanted to see people of color and different ethnicities entering our country because we were founded as a melting pot of a country. We were founded by immigrants. So that was something that many people wanted to see still put in place. This article said, the Board of Missions of the Methodist Church has called for a revision of the McCarran-Walker Act to provide for admission for at least 300,000 immigrants a year without discrimination based on race, sex, or national origin. And at the time, this is about double of what the quota allowed the country to bring in for immigration. So they wanted to see those numbers doubled and an influx of immigrants, no matter what their skin color was, what they believed, religion, any of that. So that was a big theme throughout a lot of these articles that I read. Continuing with that, the last article from the 1950s that I read was called Let Us Open Again the Gates. And this article was a very long, detailed article of why immigrants are good for our country and what they can do to make America a great place to be. And the excerpt from the newspaper says, the Immigration Act of 1924, which still stands as the law of the land, established a quota system for immigration based on national origin. The quota for each country is determined by the number of persons born in that country who are living in the United States in 1920. Theoretically, the admission of 153,174 immigrants a year is possible under the Act. Actually, only about one half the quota has been used on the average every year. So that was the maximum number of immigrants that they were letting be brought in. And essentially, if the number or quota has been hit for a certain country, they therefore would not let anyone else from that country come into the United States. So this article really talked about that immigrants are what makes America prosper with their talents and what they can bring to our country and how they can help the United States grow, essentially. So they go on and talk about how some of our greatest scientists and engineers have been immigrants in our country, from people such as Andrew Carnegie, who developed our great steel industry, to Hermann Frasch, a chemist who discovered the initial process of refining petroleum, and so on and so forth. So they were just giving examples of all the great people in our history that did not originally start out in the United States. And they also pointed out that the states with the most immigrants were also the wealthiest states with per capita wealth. So it was just a whole article basically pointing out why it's important that we continue to accept immigrants and use them to build our country. They go on to talk about how, a lot of jobs that immigrants do and do well are not jobs that Americans can really do or are willing to do. So immigrants are really willing to get their hands dirty and do a lot of the jobs that some of us may not want to. So again, this was just another article reiterating that this act, the McCarran-Walker Act, was essentially unacceptable and that there needed to be change in order to keep America on the right path. So moving on, my article from today's time is Trump's new travel ban blocks migrants from 6 nations, sparing Iraq. So I thought this was an interesting article to tie in to the immigration issues we had in the 1950s because I think there are a lot of similarities between the two. So you see the excerpt at the bottom here from the Washington Post. It said, President Trump signed an executive order on Monday blocking citizens of 6 predominantly Muslim countries from entering the United States, the most significant hardening of immigration policy in generations, even with changes intended to blunt legal and political opposition. So, what the McCarran-Walker Act was doing in the 50s to block out people of color is almost very similar to what President Trump was doing to keep essentially Muslims out of our country, people from that faith and that religion. I know that many Americans fear the Muslim religion, especially after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and it is a big source of fear for our country, which I think a lot of where that travel ban came from. It prevented a lot of refugees from coming in to our country at the time, and were not able to escape the tough times that they were facing in their country. So in this article, compared to the ones from the 50s, it really seems as though there were aspects that really was just history repeating itself. Immigration and travel was being limited due to racial biases in both situations. And really the reoccurring theme was that a majority of citizens want to see immigration in our country. You saw with President Trump's travel ban a lot of people protesting and fighting back and wanting changes made to the ban because they didn't believe that that was the right thing to be doing, as well as in the 50s where you see the Methodist Church and other citizens fighting back and saying, no, we need immigration in our country to make it great. So it was really interesting to see how the two situations compared today, and really finding something that was an issue in the 50s really resonating with today. So thanks for listening.